Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. I hope you are doing well, and we are going to talk a little bit about dating today, what a first date is like for couples who are successful many years later on. I'm going to talk about 4 dates, and hopefully that will give you a range of what to look for. I've been in bed a lot, and I've been watching quite a few shows, and I'm like, maybe we should talk, since dating isn't really taught in any of the movies, in our culture, or even embraced at all. So maybe it's time to actually talk about what a good first date looks like, so that maybe you know what will be successful further on down the line, what it actually looks like on that first date. So, first of all, before we get going, if it sounds like there is an earthquake happening in my house, that is just my washer and dryer. It sounds like literally my feet are shaking beneath me. No, that is not an actual earthquake happening. I actually pressed a button to do that. And didn't know I'd be taping, so that is where we're at. Okay, so let's get on to the very first date. I hope you guys learned something from this. I certainly love all these people. There is a range. I try to pick a range of different types of people for you, so that maybe everybody from different demographics can relate, I hope. So, all right, but I do have to hide identity, so, because you know why. For those of you who've been with me for a while. All right, so let's get started with couple number 1. All right, so I've talked about eHarmony on my Twitter feed. If you haven't signed up for my Twitter, at Book of Katherine, that's what it is. The handle's at Book of Katherine. I kind of write on there a whole lot, way more than I'm ever active on here. So if you aren't with that, you got to get with that. So, but I mentioned eHarmony on there because what happened is that a lot of couples gave up on Match.com and went to eHarmony. eHarmony, I believe, was originally written for faith couples to get together, like Christian couples. But then it was so successful that they started talking about it a lot, and it wasn't like, oh, only Christian couples can get on there. And so other people started getting on there. So the couple that I have, they're not Christians at all, but they had been dating, and then they were in Silicon Valley, and they were like, I heard a lot of good things. They knew a lot of people in Silicon Valley who had met and married through eHarmony and were very happy, and that's what they wanted. And so they did. They got onto it, and they had both been through rough relationships or whatever. But once they met, like eHarmony does this long questionnaire, and I know that it's kind of tough, and they give you a personality profile. But you really got to know yourself to answer those questions, and you also have to be honest. That is what anyone who has met and married, and when I say met and married, like marriage wasn't necessarily gold. I believe the couples that I'm going to be mentioning today, 2 of them out of the 4 used eHarmony. They're very different from each other. Neither one of them are Christians, and they both got on it because other people had got on it and were so happy dating, and they ended up getting married. They didn't get on it with the goal of getting married. They were just so happy that it ended up happening. So, gosh, that's right. And both actually had kids. So this couple was in Silicon Valley, and they just kept hearing things about it. And they got on there, and they didn't really have a lot of time. Both of them were in the same field, it turns out. And they didn't have a lot of time, and they were just like, fill it out and get the 100 questions done, because they were just like, I'm tired of trying to do Match.com. They felt like they were getting all and like fish in the sea, and they were like, this isn't even close to us. And so they got on it, and that was their first match. And then it lets you talk to each other. I do believe things have changed, but at that time, they weren't allowed to share a photo. You had to talk to each other. You could send questions back to one another. And you learned a lot about I remember we were hanging with one of the couples because we didn't know the other one at the time. And they really learned a lot just by, like, the questions they got back. Like, the person was like, these are the 3, out of all the 25 questions I can ask, these are the 3 questions I want to ask you. And it really tells you a lot about that person. I don't know if they still do it that way or anything like that. But anyway, so they met, and what happened is they met, and I forget where they met. I remember what it looks like. I don't remember his school. They met for coffee, because that's the big thing, is that you meet for coffee on these dates. And don't ever go to dinner first thing. You want to meet for coffee, so that if they're an unsafe person, you can get out of there. You can just slip through the crowd. You want to meet in public place, so protect yourself. So you go ahead and you meet. Don't start out with dinner. You can't do that anymore. So you go ahead and you do coffee, and you meet up for coffee, and then you can cut it short if you need to. They both met for coffee, and that was it. Like, that was the end. They just started walking and talking, and none of us heard from them for like the next 6 hours. We were just like, did they die? And they met, and they just and then that was it. They just walked, and they didn't stop talking. And then it ended up going into They were like, oh, we're getting a bite to eat. That's when we heard from them. Then they went off into the evening, and then they talked on the phone. That like they were just attached at the hip, and that was the end of it. That was the end of it. So that eHarmony back and forth really worked for them. Then they had good luck right off the start. So I should probably just continue with the second eHarmony couple since we're talking about eHarmony. And this couple lived in a totally different state, and they actually came from very different backgrounds. One of the couples actually came from a same-sex parent, like they're a couple same-sex marriage. And then the other one was like totally different background, like totally completely different background. But they both were in the same area. It was kind of a remote kind of area. It wasn't really, really heavily populated or anything. And they both got on it. And what's very interesting about this is that they both try to answer the questions kind of like the way that you would date. You put your best foot forward. And so they were trying to do it, and just they were finding like either no matches at all, which is rare with them. And you have to say what, how far you're willing to go or whatever. But they weren't getting any matches, or it was just not at all. And they both took about 6 months, ironically. Both took about 6 months. I can't remember one of them. One was a little bit shorter. And they both were like, screw this. It's not working for us. We're just going to be ourselves. It's hysterical because they both said at the same time when we were at dinner with them hearing about it. And they both got on there when we were meeting him. And so they, all right. So, oops. So anyway, they went ahead and we're like, screw this. We're just going to go ahead and do this ourselves. We're going to do it, and we're going to answer honestly. And they just redid the whole test and just let it all out. Like it's 100 questions or something like that. I can't remember. And they just like let it all out. They were just like, bear everything. Just bear it all. Bear it all. And they did. They had some things to hide. They had some things that you would normally want to hide from a person like on the other end. And they didn't. They didn't hold anything back. And then boom, like they got 3 matches back or something like that. And they met each other. And that was it. They met up and walked for the rest of the day. That was it. Off into the sunset. And that is something that, well, I guess I'll keep going. All right. So I'll go into the third one because it's similar. Well, no, I want to just mention this because this is one of the things I saw on the show. I saw the show be like, it was really interesting to see the people, the guys that I saw on the show. It was called like Undateables or something. And I was like, oh no, I could just tell these young men were adorable. They would be great partners. They're the kind of guys that you girls keep telling me are not out there. They don't exist. And I'm like, these are those guys. Except that I was like, they're immature. And they were pretty young. They were in the early 20s. And I know men like that. They have this angelic woman that they're imagining. Like and they came from different races and different, cultures, but they all have this like ideal woman up there, like angelic, like someone like, a runway model, like, or they wanted like Kate Beckinsale, or they want some girl that's like anorexic and just, everything's fake and all they see is photoshopped photos of them. Or what I heard a lot was they wanted carbon copies of themselves. When they went to the matchmaker and they were like, here's what I want, they listed all of their own qualities. They wanted a mirror. And that's what happens when we raise narcissists, when our parents just give us everything we want. We have a helicopter parenting. That's not what's best for us, having a mirror of ourselves. And this matchmaker was so good, they actually matched them up with people that were remarkably similar. But I watched all these people throw it away because what happened was I was like, this matchmaker is so good that all the couples on the episode got together with the people and ended up walking for hours. All of them, like, couldn't stop talking. And I was like, I just have this bad feeling about all of them. And boom, one of them just was like, the girl turned it down. She was just like, oh, just friends. Like, I really like to see you again, but just friends. And I was like, you just walked and talked with this person and laughed for hours and hours. You didn't just like separate. And then you were like just friends. And I really, just the more I watched, the more I was like, I got to do this video. You really cannot underestimate how rare that is. To find somebody, people wait all of their lives to find someone they can walk and talk with. I'm constantly saying, when you look for a partner in life, look with somebody you can room wait with. because the sex is going to go away. There's going to be times where you can't have sex. Someone has to leave for a job. There's some that you can learn to have amazing sex. That is a skill that you learn. And the more you fall in love with each other, the more sexually attracted you get to. I've seen every type of relationship under the sun. And trust me, the underlying thing, like lust can go away. Lust can go away. And you've heard of couples, I know you've heard of couples that they have that sexual connection, but everything else is chaos. And it's like they're, and some I could tell were just waiting for someone with money. And I was like, yeah, you wait for a guy that they can read that. Guys with money can read that on a girl. They can smell it on a girl, and they make you pay for it. And abuse happens, and then divorce happens. And I'm like, there's no seeing around corners here. There's no maturity to see around corners about how much suffering you will avoid if you're smart enough to actually not take for granted finding a person that you can walk and talk with for hours on end. That doesn't happen. That really doesn't happen. Not unless you feel like you're having to fake it the whole time. If you feel like, yeah, I could still get to know something about this person, just let me give you a tip. Keep meeting with that person. You don't have to turn them down at the end of the date. That's what more dates are for. Take the time and just see. Men, if a girl's like just friends, just say, okay. If you're still interested in her, just be like, okay. And keep meeting with her, because girls may have standards and they don't know what they're missing out on. And you don't push them and stuff, you just meet. But I know so many girlfriends that ended up like early 20s. They were looking for this whole list, and they all ended up marrying their best friend, which was a guy, all of them. And they're super, super happy. But there's this thing that happens when you start to realize how crappy people can be out there. Like how hard it is to find somebody that will treat you well with dignity and respect. And do not take that for granted when you find someone of the opposite sex that has your similar interests or has your similar humor. You know how everyone's saying, I really want to find someone with a good sense of humor? Like that's what they mean, is my same sense of humor. If you share the same sense of humor, if you're getting each other's jokes. And it was really interesting because this lady always matched them up with the same race and the same background. And it was interesting to see which backgrounds had friends that were all of other races, but they were like, and you could see the girls would be like goo goo gaga over these guys. But, they wore no makeup, they wore plain clothes, they didn't do their hair. And the guy would be like this cute guy, and these girls would be just in love with him. And they hang out with this guy all the time. But they just sit there sheepish, and they're from a different background, different culture. And the guy was like, angel on a pedestal, angel on a pedestal. I want to have this person from my culture, this cultural goddess that does all that, meets all these things. And, and of course, one was like, oh, movies. I love these type of movies. And I'm just like, you should see what these women look like in these type of movies. They look like real life anime characters. And I'm like, right. And of course, then they got crushed because it's really, you have to be realistic about what you're looking for. Instead of thinking like, can I get through the next 5 minutes, or can I get, not the next 5 minutes, but like, do I really want to do another date? Really ask yourself, like, could it be 10 years down the line when I don't have anybody, will I regret having a second date with this person? If there is a chance that in 10 years' time, I will not have found anyone, I will have bad relationship after bad relationship, will I regret not doing a second date with this person? Then you need to do a second date, even if it's just hanging out with friends. Besides, we all need to develop relationships, and that's networking and getting to know people. Never turn down a connection where you actually walk around and have a good time with. So I just really wanted to mention that, like, I've been around the block enough, and I've just known thousands upon thousands of people now, like just from all my traveling and from my super large workshops and talking to everybody afterwards, and consulting with companies and gosh, dancing. Those were okay. So like just from all over, I am telling you, like the couples that are laughing together and are together the longest and never have to worry about like, are we going to end in divorce, and never have to worry about abuse? Because if you're hanging out with somebody that there's something that bugs you right now, like really, really bugs you, and you're kind of like, well, I hate it when he does that, but oh, trust me, you will want to stab him for it in 5 years' time. Like it will get not cute real fast. If there's something you don't like that he does, like a way that he shoves you or something, or the way he puts you down, it's not so cute in 5 years' time. So if you're finding someone that just laughs and actually interested, and that's the other thing, guys, Please do not sit down and tell the girl everything that you expect. That is one of the things that all of the girls in these episodes listen to the guy. All of these girls just let the guy go. And I'm just like, yep, so much for women's liberation. Like, they all just let the guys go. And the guys just started off by talking about themselves. And then finally we're like, oh, well, maybe I should ask about her. Some of them. And I know it's nerves and I get it, but dang, like, you're telling her that you are not interested in her. She got all ready for this date and you're just gonna, women have a nurturing side. They'll let you, they're nervous too. And so if it's easier to just let you talk and you want to talk, that's great. But you are telling her something when all you do is you list your expectations. You should have no expectations. Your only expectations is to learn more about her and see if you're able to talk and communicate with her without getting in a fight. That's the purpose of a first date. Can you talk and communicate without getting in a fight? Does the other person, are they angry? Are they angry? Are they bitter? No? Great. Don't talk about deep things. Talk about lighthearted things. Talk about, movies and just the lighthearted things. Don't get into deep and dirty. You have no right to be intimate with that person yet on a mature level, like an emotional level. That takes trust for anyone to be intimate. So, some of these guys are like, so what are you looking for in a guy? And they're just like, what if they said to you, like, what are you looking for in a girl? Of course, some of them did answer that. Like, they just told these girls what they're looking for already. That's it. Just that can you try and use some empathy? And I understand why it's so easy to do this, because we live in a society, and your parents did this for you. They told you that the world is born to, like, the entire world out there works around you, when in reality it doesn't. And the person you're sitting down with is about your age, and so their parents told them the entire world works around them. You two are going to have to be mature enough to come to the table and be like, okay, I know you were pampered and I know I was pampered, but let's try and find out about each other and not be totally self-centered in this conversation today. Shall we try that? Let's just see if we have the same sense of humor and if we laugh at the same things or talk about, whatever. Try and avoid politics if you can. But anyway, so eHarmony, like, when these two people just walked off, that was it. We all knew it. But they were also older. They were also older than these people I'm watching on these TV programs. And they are older to the point where they had been around the block dating, and they were like, thank you that this person exists. I know for me with my husband, like, I know that I'll never forget it. Like, I was really into this one drink. I don't know if I've shared the story already, but it was way before I fell for him. And we didn't go on a formal date. We fell in love while we were working together. And we were out picking up supplies or something, and I was like, oh, I really want this. And he's like, I was just going to say the same thing. And we both, like, popped the top, and we both were like, and it was diet or whatever, but we just were like, at the same time. Like, it was so good because it was so hot out, it was in California, and we've been working all day, and we let out the same, like, And I remember going on a walk with my girlfriend that evening and saying, I didn't know that could happen with a guy. Like, I didn't know. Now, in my head, like, I wasn't thinking they were a person. Like, there was a big issue that I was like, there's no, like, not even in my head. But I was like, is that what a relationship can be like? Like, can you share stuff like that? Like, I didn't know you could share stuff like that. And so that kind of gave me hope that maybe there were people out there you could share. I didn't know it was actually him, like, because that kept happening. But everybody was like, oh, who's your boyfriend before we were boyfriend, and then who's your fiance before we were engaged, and then who's your husband? And I was just like, stop hitting us over the head. But they were all strangers. They didn't know. So, but both of us came from bad. We were so hesitant. You know what I mean? I really wish we had just gone for it. And that's the thing. And you find somebody, don't get married for other people and do the dates for them. If you're ready to get married, trust me, you'll regret it. I've said that before, like, you will regret waiting, you will regret wedding, guys. People don't have fun marriages anymore. The families, everybody's so wrapped up into their own thing. Everybody's on Facebook. Everyone goes into a drive-thru and orders things exactly the way they want. Everything's so tailored to them that then they get to a wedding where you're supposed to put all of your needs on hold for the bride and groom, and families no longer do that. They're so codependent that both families put their needs ahead of the bride and groom. And what you see today is just bride and grooms everywhere. It doesn't matter what state I'm in. Bride and grooms everywhere are just playing Make the Family Happy. And I'm just like, oh, like, you know, so the happiest couples I've seen since that whole trend started were ones that did not get married with family. And I'm just kind of like, that would have been a great idea. So great idea. Not external, like I'm glad we had, but the immediate, it was total just a fight, you know, and we should have seen that coming. So, all right. So then this one is the one, this one's a faith couple actually. So it's a really different story, but I know some of you guys are Christians out there. And so, and maybe this faith thing will actually, even if you're Buddhist or even if you're Muslim and you just happen to watch me or whatever, this may, well, Muslim, there's arranged marriages, so that doesn't count. But basically, if you're something in faith or if you're Jewish, and this may, not Hasidic Jewish, but if you're Jewish, this may actually be something you can relate to. So basically, it's just such a story. It's a story I love sharing because it's just, I don't know of any other like it. I never saw it since or whatever. But this guy was much younger than this girl, and they were out on some community trip or whatever. And he just went up to her, and he was way younger than her. And he was just like, you know, I believe you're the one. And she was just like, eh. And she was just like, that you're crazy. You're like this much, you know, whatever. And you're this much. He was younger than her. And she was just like, you're insane. Now he was of age. He was over 18 or whatever. But she was just like, what are you, crazy? And he was like, no, I know. And I understand if you don't, but I would like to date you. And if you'd be willing, I'd love to date you. And she was kind of like, what? And of course, she was attracted to him. She thought he was cute. She loved him. She thought he had incredible, like, character is what she said all the time. She said he has an incredible character. She liked everything about him, but the age thing was just so in her way. And I remember that's where and that's why the story is so memorable for me, because we had a big talk. Like, she came over, and I wasn't really around for much of them. Like, they were a church, and they were involved in this church. But she came around for a conversation. We were on a couch, and she said she was just really torn up and had been asking everybody. And I finally was like, look, is it just the age thing? And they were like, well, yeah. Like, I really was like, look, okay, if we took away the age, like if we zoomed him up to be your age, like, then would you date him? And she was like, heck yeah. And I was like, all right, what if you zoom down to his age? Would you date him? She's like, heck yeah. And I was like, is it that he's being so forward? She's like, I actually kind of like that. I like somebody who knows what they want. I like that he's so firm. He seems just calm and at peace, and he's not worried about anything. And I really, really am actually attracted to that. And I was just like, look, you know, like, you're going to have to just, and I forget what I said, but basically, like, after that, she dated him, and they were married not long after, and they had a whole gaggle of kids, like a whole huge gaggle of kids. And they were amazing parents, just amazing parents. And you don't notice the age. Like, you really don't notice the age. I've seen that with couples that, you know, one or the other or whatever. And they, if they really do love each other, they seem to age together. Everyone thinks they're the same age. And so it was kind of funny because then, that kind of happened in it was just like, I was like, I have to take my own advice now, because that was my big problem. And I was like, oh, I stuck my foot in my mouth. Like, that's when they didn't live anywhere near me at the time, but I called them, and I was just like, yeah, you got even with me. So, because I was like, no way. And no, but it's too late. I was already in love. So it's just with my best friend, and I didn't know or anything. So, but oh well. And that's what I mean by the back door. Like, you know, like, it's not, but you know what I mean? Like the, being best friends, it leads to other things. And it's just like, then if they were ever gone, I was just like oxygen out of the room. Like, it just hurts so much. And I was like, where did this come from? I wasn't prepared for it, because we didn't go in dating. And in fact, when we tried dating, it was really, really awkward to actually, because dating really is putting your best foot forward. But then couples, and I saw this a lot, which is why I say start with the coffee, because going on a date, people put on kind of a mask. They put their best foot forward, and then forever after, they're like, well, they like me because of me, or do they like me because of that best foot forward I put on? Like the way I dress, do I have to always do this? And they're very hesitant to ever let down the mask. I know one girl like had really bad, and she always wore, she'd go jogging with him, and so she always wore super heavy makeup to cover up her heavy acne scars. But then as the wedding got closer and stuff, she started really freaking out, like literally about, oh, if we get married, he's going to actually see. And I was like, you didn't think of that before? That never entered your head? Like, she's like, I'm going to have to go to it. And I was like, oh, like that didn't, I don't know how that relationship turned out, but that's not very good. Like, you know, like there has to be, you have to get at some point. And I was just lucky enough where we started as friends. So that's why it's kind of good to do a coffee date or something like that, is because then you don't have this huge expectation. You don't have to get super, it takes the casualness down and you present more of a real version of yourself to this person. So anyway, and then the final one is hysterical because this person also called me. These are why they're stories that I like to share because I was more involved in it, if that makes sense. Like a lot of my, most of my friends, I had nothing to do with. But I knew more about the friends that I was actually talking with at the time. And this girl was going on a date. And for other reasons, like there's just because of other things in life, there hadn't been a lot of dating going on. And they were starting to think about dating. And but they knew my relationship with my husband. And they really, really wanted that. And they were just like, what am I supposed to be looking like? I need to relearn like what dating is. Can you like align me? On the drive to the date, she's like on the phone with me, like, can you align yourself? Can you just tell me, like, what am I looking for again? Like, what is it that I'm supposed to, and I just was like, look, da, 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 da. And I just outlined and I was like, this is what, it's going to be first date, like, do you click? Like, do you, or is it easy to talk with them? Do you want to keep talking into them? You want a best friend that you can live with the rest of your life? And then passion comes. And if you don't have it, or you'll have passion right away, but you want to have passion with someone that you can actually, that you like. That's my point, is it's not just about loving them. You got to like them too. You got to like them because trust me, that liking part will ruin the love part of the sex. It will. It seeps in. God, I've seen it so many times. Please, please don't make that mistake. Used to be this great article that used to be in all the newspapers that was like, is it lust or love? And it was a great article that was always out in print like every single year. And you could read through it and you just got to like align in your head, like, is this lust or is this love? And I needed to use that a lot in my own life to figure out when my emotions got all like wrapped up and I couldn't see my way through the thicket. And I was just like, well, which one is it that I'm actually feeling? Like if I'm going to go off for the rest of my life with this person, which one is it that I'm feeling? Am I feeling safe around this person? Or is it just that I want to be reckless around this person? I like that wild abandon. Which, trust me, like, wild abandon is fantastic. But wild abandon also comes when you trust that person. You want to be able to be wild and crazy at some point and be wildly abandoned and be yourself with that person when it comes to touching each other. And that, remember to do that. Some people are because they have wounds. Like if you've been sexually abused, you either turn into like you don't have sex at all. You pretty much stay celibate. You're scared to be touched. Being touched causes fear, or you go super, super promiscuous. That's what child abuse can do to women, right? So there's that at play. I understand that. I'm not a doctor, but said all the time. So that's not like any new fact. But I forgot my stuff. But like really good wild abandon, and adventure really comes when you trust the person. Like there's boundaries when you trust a person, there are boundaries, and I'm getting into sex. So, all right. So, but there's just benefits, so many benefits that people, you don't see in the media, and they used to have it. And, how Harry met Sally, or When Harry Met Sally, that's totally it. They're like, it was the best they'd ever had, and they've been friends all these years. And they're just meant to be, but they're friends for such a long time, and then they realized, like, they just happened to, and they both said, like, it was the best they'd ever had. And there's a reason for that. Like, there's a reason you see, couples, like, when I used to go dancing, there's these couples who created a certain dance, and they got out there, and I was like, we just saw one at a dance recently, and the guy, we put on this one, like, Argentine tango, and he was like, right at the woman, and I literally, like, jumped back, like, excuse me, but I was like, I wasn't ready for it, because he'd just been all timid, and then, boom, Argentine tango came on, or Argentine tango, and he just really, stop, right at her, and she was like, and this was an older couple, and I gotta see, like, the sexiest dances I've ever seen are with older couples. They trust each other. They do the craziest things on the floor. You and I when we bring friends, like, they turn red, and we're just like, like, you can only imagine what's going on. So what kind of adventurous life they have outside of that. That's what you want, and don't underestimate what being able to walk together and talk together can, lead to in all the other areas of life. So then, because your parents are not going to be there forever. Your parents are not going to be there. They have a shorter time than you realize. Lifespans are freaking quickening up like that, and the healthcare system is not great. 100,000 doctors have left in the last few years. Like, they're out of the field. That's it. It's overcrowded like Canada. So, all right. So the very last one. So on the phone, she's like, what do I need to do? And she gets there. And it's like this person, I can't remember the history, but they sit down and then they end up talking about something. And of course, he's into himself. And while they're there, they went to this little bar that had like entertainment at the bar. And so while she's sitting there and he's like, oh, I'm thinking about that. Oh, you made me think of that. And while he's doing notes, like early in, she like looks on over at the entertainment and there's this guy and he's like, and she was like, Katherine. And I'm just like, it's over so soon. And she's just like, I think I found him. And I was just like, okay, that's great. That's really the first day. She's like, but it's not my date. And she just couldn't help herself. And she was just like, and got pulled up to the front and ended up playing like a musical instrument, like somehow they just knew, and the whole thing knew they fit musical instrument, and they just entertained the crowd, and then and that was it. That was it. And it was even near like a holiday. I remember it was like over some kind of holiday that most families get together. I can't remember if it was Mother's Day or if it was some holiday where it was really close to it and they didn't know if they wanted to do it. She's like, should I be doing it? I'm just like, go do it. You need to get on a date. Like, you need to get out there with your new skills. Like, just go and whatever. And that was it. Like, they even, like, they skipped the holiday, but then they were out again the next day, and then they out again, and they were having fun, like, out doing, and that was it. They're just into the sunset. And these people, like, were, like, not, I can't tell you. So I'm trying to keep everyone quiet. So, but yeah, they knew each other enough, but he just knew, and she just knew, like with an eye. And I think when they both play musical instruments, I think there's this artist thing, and she just, every time there was breaks, she'd be like, Katherine! Katherine! And finally she took a break and she called me and she was just like, it's not the guy though. And I was like, well, how's the guy doing? And she's like, well, he looks happy actually. The guy that she had gone on a date with was so into some piece of information she gave him that he was still taking notes, unaware that another man in a band had just like walked her off, like, and just took his date. And that's what I mean, men. Please be interested in the girls you're going out with. Remember how nervous you were about the date, and maybe pay attention so that maybe, because, these women that I'm talking about, all four of them were incredible catches, like incredible women that you guys keep saying don't exist out there. And these men are incredible. They were all worth each other. Like, they're all so worth each other, and just all, not just best friends, but just they think alike and stuff. And just like my husband and I, like, we finish each other's sentences. We don't have to talk to each other. And not that all of us have our similarities in different areas. Like, these two were like, musically oriented. And then these two were like, they worked in the same profession that had nothing to do. It was like some kind of public service. But all of them had some area where they shared, or they thought the same way, or they thought the same things. And my husband and I had nothing to do, like total opposite ends of, if we had been on the same campus together, we would have been on the opposite sides. You know, they have like North and South campus, and there's always something different there. No, we would have been nowhere near. We never would have run into each other, right? Except that we thought alike, like our thought processes were alike, and we finished each other's sentences all the time. Or like when I'm like, ooh, I really would like a, you know, I really need to get a rupee, and he already has one, he's handing it to me, and I'm just like, how did I get so lucky? But I want to say at the very end of this, like at the very end to wrap it up or whatever, how did I get so lucky? Being in a relationship is risky. It is risky. Love is risky because you're no longer in control of your own life. And that's why a lot of people just say friends and they run away, because they actually know it could work. And I had to have a friend come in like I knew like it would work, and I was not willing to give up. I had fought my way out of my family too much, and I just was like, relationships lead to pain. Even if we stay together, I'm going to attach myself to another person, and I don't know what that's going to lead. Like, at least I'm going to know my own life. And a friend came to me and said they came in the right day, like something like the fates were aligned, the stars were aligned or something. And I just made the decision to not date him and not date him anymore. And a friend came in and said, like him, and they were just like, what's wrong? They just knew. And they were from out of town. They had driven out just to like go to my storefront. They walked in. And they just took one look at me, like I'd forgotten to lock the door. Told you, stars were aligned. Walked in, took one look at me, and was like, what's wrong? And I was kind of like, I'm not gonna, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and he just said, don't be stupid like me. And they were someone I really, really respected and were older. And they had been in this relationship, like these kind of relationships, and then they broke up and everyone didn't understand it. And he told me, he was like, remember this girl? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I faked an incident. You remember this incident? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I invented that to get out because I knew I loved her. He's like, don't live without love. He's like, I'm with someone now, but I don't love them like I love. And I knew he was being honest. I'm not saying he was the same. Like, I'm not, you know, friends. I have friends all different kinds. I kind of love people where they're at, unless, you know, there's a certain level, you know what I mean? So, but in that moment, and I think that's why we're good friends, because he was always straight with me. Like, he trusted me. He knew he could trust me. And so there's some people, anyway, it's a long story. So, but he just was like, don't live without love. And then he left, and he was like, he's like, I've never told anyone that story. And it just sunk with me. And I made sure that they were in my wedding party, because I was like, it was such I had seen his life with her, and then I saw his life without her. And he's like, he just said, don't live without it. And I, in that moment, I was like, I saw what my future would be like without love. Because I knew if I didn't stay with him, there wouldn't ever be anyone else that matched me so perfect that I just felt like I could be myself with. And in that moment, he kind of scared me straight, to be honest. He scared me into it and got me over my family wounds of just being self-protective and everyone's out to get me, and chose to trust him and know he's not my family. And the only other time I got scared is when I walked down the aisle. I was terrified. Oh, when he asked me to marry him, I got scared in that moment just a little bit. And then when I walked down the aisle, I got scared. I remember my friend stood by me when I was putting on my makeup for the wedding, because he was like, you're not going to run. Like, he stood right next to me. And once you're married, like, everything was great. I was like, wish we'd done this earlier, wish we'd done. It was only these things where you're most vulnerable and raw, where your family's wounds and your family's love mapping can come in and try and hijack what you really want and what you really know to be true. And it gets in here and you get emotional, and it can overrun all these emotions down here that are, you know, really from thoughts up here, can overrun your mind and be too loud for your mind to hear. And he was standing there being like, you know, don't forget what you chose, and know what you're doing, and know what you want, and don't let this fear just hijack the whole thing. And I don't think I would have run, but I do know that I was glad that he was there with me in that moment to kind of be like just, I don't know, it felt like tensing rod, it's a grounding rod. And I was really glad that they were there. And it meant the world to me. And because I didn't really have parents, you know what I mean? So for me, that was a big deal. And my point is that love is risky, but it's worth it. It's so, so worth it. And I never regretted it after that. I cannot explain to you the adventures that we have been on. I can't begin to explain to you adventures. And just like every adventure, like in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit says, like every adventure has a dragon. There have been dragons, not for us, but like for us to face as a couple, but you can handle more as a couple. You can handle when you're not alone in life, you can handle a lot more. I have his back and he has my back. And it's been rare when we've clashed. And that's the point is that you want to go throughout life a team. You don't want to go out with life and live your life like always trying to solve issues to come together. You want to naturally be together so that when life comes at you, as it always will, you've kind of like got each other's back and you can handle the impact of life more. For example, these car accidents, you know what I mean? Like these horrible, horrible, horrible road condition car accidents, you know, and that he doesn't make me feel sick, like doesn't recognize the illness and like sees things and catches things. And I remember feeling like a little tinge when we said our vows in sickness and in health. And I remember feeling like this jolt, like here, like a fear, and maybe it's just the fear thing or whatever. And like how horrible that would be for one of us to be sick. There's a reason those vows are written that way, right? We didn't do the whole writing our vows thing. It was too much for me. Like I wasn't writing yet. And that freaked me out too much to write something and then have everybody hear it. Like we wrote each other cards. Like we just did that. Like we were just like, nope, plain vows. That's good. We're happy. Like we didn't do anything. We didn't do anything at all. We were just kind of like trying to make both families happy. We were focused outwards and we shouldn't have. We should have been focused inwards. But the honeymoon was phenomenal. And I don't know, you guys, it's only gotten better. It's only gotten better. But even this far in, I regret not marrying him the moment I knew. You will know. You know. There's a time where you know. You just know they're the one. And then you think, oh, I want all this time to get ready and all this time to plan and just make sure it's you. But I'm talking about dating. So just consider that. Like, remember what you're getting yourself into and what is the long-term goal. And you need to be thinking about that when you meet them before you so easily throw it away just because you haven't been through the next 5 years of crappy people, you know? So you have a really highly skilled person putting you together or whatever it took to finally meet someone that you can walk along with and talk with and laugh with. Just because it happens easily does not mean that it'll happen again. They all of them actually mentioned, all the eHarmony people, no, all four couples, none of them had met someone they could just walk and talk with. That was a similarity they all had. It wasn't necessarily a first date or whatever, but none of them had a relationship, and they are the range of relationships across both of them. You know, some starting at very, very young ages, and then some starting at later ages. The range of relationships was so vast and wide, and none of them had found someone that they could hold hands with in old age one day. You know, and don't. I know it sucks to look around the corner, but look around the corner. I'm just here to tell you, as someone who's been around the corner, it's rare. It's really, really rare. And compromise is good, because when you compromise with another person and you kind of set your standards and you change your standards just a little bit, you'd be surprised at what you can learn from the other person. Like one of the episodes had a guy who was like, I want them to be interested in this. But a lady gave them a creative arts area in a different way. And then they ended up talking about these two areas and learning, and both of their worlds expanded. Rather than if he had just gotten a carbon copy of himself, instead, he himself grew, and so did she. And that's beautiful. It's something worth fighting for, and it's worth the risk. I hope that helps. Just 4 stories or whatever. And yeah, I think it did a pretty good job. So covering up who they are. So And if any of them are watching at all, so I love you and thank you for sharing this with me, because you changed my life for the better, letting me see what real life love is like in different forms. You guys were an example to me at moments in my life where I just need that you guys really touch me with your love and compassion and joy around one another in all different walks of life. You stay with me all the time and you make me a better person. I love you so much, and I do miss you. I do miss you so, so much, and I'm fighting to get out of this so that we can see each other in person again. All right. I love you. I love the rest of you guys so much too, and can't wait to see you in person too. All right. Bye, everybody. Here's some videos for you. Let's see here, and I just posted a video of Lila. I hope you guys enjoy that. I know you guys are thinking politics, but I've just been writing about politics so much that in another arena that I keep forgetting to actually tape something on politics. So I'll try to do something on politics soon, because to me, I'm talking about it all the time. So, all right, I love you so much. Bye.